On New Year's Eve, Emily sat down to what seemed like a perfect family dinner. But hidden in her favorite wild mushroom soup was a deadly secret. One spoonful was meant to end her life, until a single recording turned the Frost family's plot into their downfall. The Frost estate gleamed with warm golden light that night, its sprawling dining room decorated with crystal chandeliers, garlands of pine, and a long mahogany table dressed in silverware. It was New Year's Eve, and the Frost family gathered for what outsiders would call a perfect holiday dinner. But beneath the polished surface, shadows lurked. Eleanor Frost, the matriarch, sat at the head of the table, her silver hair styled immaculately, her eyes sharp behind elegant glasses. Beside her was her son Richard, a tall man in his 30s, handsome in a clean-cut way that hid his calculating nature. Across from them sat Emily, Richard's wife, slender and soft-featured, wearing a pale blue evening dress that contrasted with her tired eyes. For Emily, this evening should have been about family and celebration, yet every detail fell off. The laughter was too loud, the smiles too forced, the glances exchanged between her husband and his mother too rehearsed. Even the food, though exquisite, lobster bisque, roasted turkey, and her favorite wild mushroom soup, sat on the table like props in a staged performance. Emily's father, Mr. Robert Hayes, a once powerful construction magnate, was absent. Ill and confined to his own estate miles away, he had entrusted Emily as his only daughter to carry his legacy. That legacy was precisely what made her valuable to the Frosts, and what made her uneasy tonight. Halfway through dinner, Emily excused herself under the pretense of taking a phone call. She slipped quietly down the hallway, her heels sinking into the thick Persian rug, until she reached the butler's pantry just off the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar. She meant to adjust her breathing in private, but then froze. Through the narrow gap, voices seeped out, low but distinct. Eleanor's voice, sharp and cold. "It must happen tonight. One spoonful of that soup, and she won't wake up tomorrow." Richard's voice, calm yet chilling. "Mother, are you certain the dosage is right?" A lighter laugh, belonging to Richard's younger sister, Claire. "Don't worry. When she's gone, the inheritance will be split. We'll all finally get what we deserve." Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. Her palms grew clammy, and the hallway seemed to close in on her. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. But then came Eleanor's unmistakable command. "Make sure she eats it. The wild mushroom soup. It's her favorite. Poetic, isn't it? Dying by what she loves most." Emily's breath caught. The soup, the very dish that had always comforted her since childhood, that she had spooned into her bowl earlier, now tainted with betrayal. Her first instinct was to run. But something inside her, perhaps her father's stubborn resilience, stopped her. With trembling hands, she pulled her phone from her clutch, slid the recorder on, and held it close to the doorframe. Every word, every sinister laugh, captured. The conversation ended with the clinking of glasses. Emily snapped the phone shut, pressing it against her chest as if it were a shield. Her mind raced. They want me dead. My own husband, my mother-in-law, even Claire. For money, for greed. And they think I'm too naive to see it. She stepped back, heart pounding, trying to compose herself before returning to the table. As she walked, the grandeur of the mansion seemed grotesque, the polished portraits of stern Frost ancestors glaring down, the chandelier's light suddenly too harsh, the clinking laughter from the dining room now sounding like a predator's growl. Sliding into her seat, Emily lifted her spoon. Richard leaned toward her, smiling warmly for the others, but whispering just for her. "Eat up, darling. You'll need your strength." Emily forced a small smile, lowering her spoon back into the bowl. The recorder in her purse felt heavier than gold. She had stumbled upon a deadly secret, and now survival meant playing along, at least for tonight. Inside, though, the warmth of the new year had turned cold. Emily knew her life was no longer safe within the Frost family. Emily's spoon hovered above the soup, her reflection wavering on the creamy surface. The scent of wild mushrooms, once comforting, now twisted her stomach. Around the table, Eleanor chatted lightly about the Frost family's future. Richard poured wine. Claire scrolled carelessly on her phone. They looked like any affluent family enjoying New Year's Eve, but Emily knew better. She set her spoon down and dabbed her lips with a napkin. "I'm not feeling well," she murmured. Eleanor's eyes flickered, sharp behind her glasses. "Nonsense. A sip of soup will help settle you," Richard added, a hand brushing her arm with practiced affection. "Mother's right. Don't let it go cold." Emily forced a thin smile but pushed the bowl slightly aside. "Maybe later?" The atmosphere stiffened, a fleeting shadow over their polite facade. Emily could feel Eleanor's glare like a blade at her neck. After dinner, guests dispersed across the mansion. Some relatives played cards in the lounge. Others gathered near the fireplace. Emily excused herself again, heading for the upstairs study. Her heart hammered, but her steps were steady. Strong. Heart. Bata. Hi. Inside, she shut the door and leaned against the oak paneling. She pulled out her phone, replaying the recording. Eleanor's icy command filled the room, Richard's low voice confirming, Claire's mocking laugh sealing the betrayal. Emily pressed a hand over her mouth. The walls of the Frost estate felt like a prison. Her husband, the man she thought had loved her, her mother-in-law, who once welcomed her, Claire, who called her sister, all plotting her death. She thought of her father, Robert Hayes, frail but still carrying the weight of an old injustice. If I die now, they win twice. Father's legacy will vanish, and their lies will reign forever. No, she wouldn't let it happen. Emily steadied her breath, opened a hidden folder on her phone, and copied the recording into cloud storage. She then dialed a secure number. Daniel Cross, her father's longtime attorney. "Emily?" Daniel's voice was calm, though surprised at the late hour. "I need your help, and I need you to believe every word I say." She relayed everything in a low, urgent tone. The overheard plan, the poisoned soup, the recording. Daniel stayed silent until she finished. "Emily, you did the right thing. Keep playing along. Tomorrow I'll come with backup. Don't confront them yet. We need more than just words. We need them caught in the act." Her hands shook, but his voice steadied her. She hung up, slipping the phone back into her clutch. Meanwhile, down in the kitchen, Eleanor and Richard whispered. "She didn't touch the soup," Richard muttered, frustration curling his jaw. Eleanor adjusted her pearl necklace. "Patience. Suspicion is natural. Tomorrow we'll try again." "She can't stay alert forever." Claire leaned against the counter, sipping champagne, smirking. "If she's too stubborn, we'll find another way." "An accident, maybe?" Their laughter rose softly, blending with the clink of crystal glasses. That night, Emily lay awake in the Frost guest room. The canopy bed felt suffocating, its velvet curtains trapping her. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. She fingered the silver pendant around her neck, a keepsake from her late mother, engraved with the words, "Faith is strength." She whispered to herself, "I have to survive this. For father, for the truth." Her mind replayed the recording, then leapt forward. How would she gather more proof? Could she outwit a family that had already plotted murder once? At dawn, the Frost mansion glowed again with artificial warmth. But Emily's gaze was colder, sharper. She knew now the smiles at breakfast were masks. She sat silently as Eleanor passed her a cup of tea. The older woman's nails painted blood red. Richard leaned close, his tone gentle yet firm. "Darling, today's a new beginning. Don't let last night's nerves spoil it." Emily looked at him, studying the man she once trusted, and saw only calculation in his eyes. She sipped the tea carefully, tasting bitterness, not just from the leaves, but from the life she was forced to play along with. By noon, she had her plan. Gather undeniable evidence. She slipped her phone into record mode whenever near Eleanor or Richard. She studied their expressions, their tones, their slips of tongue. She needed them exposed, not just suspected. That afternoon, her chance came. Passing the half-open study door, she caught Richard's voice, low but heated. "Mother, what if she finds out?" "Then we end it quickly," Eleanor hissed. An overdose. A fall down the stairs. Whatever it takes, she cannot live long enough to control Hayes Industries. Emily's pulse raced. She pressed her phone against the wall, capturing every word. The hatred in Eleanor's tone cut deeper than any knife. Late that evening, as fireworks began popping outside to welcome the new year, Emily excused herself once more. She stood on the balcony, the icy wind biting her skin. Her phone buzzed, Daniel again. Stay strong. Tomorrow we'll set the trap. But you must be ready. We'll need you to act. Emily clenched the pendant on her chest. I'm ready. Behind her, the Frost family laughed inside, raising glasses of champagne. To any outsider, they were the image of elegance. But Emily knew the truth. She was dining with predators. And with each secret recorded, each lie preserved, she was tightening the noose. Around them, not herself. The morning after New Year's, the Frost estate buzzed with the usual grandeur, maids polishing silver trays, chefs bustling in the kitchen. Yet to Emily, every sound was laced with menace. She had recordings, she had suspicion, but suspicion wasn't enough. She needed the Frost to reveal their cruelty without escape. That afternoon, Emily met secretly with Daniel Cross, her father's loyal attorney, in a quiet cafe downtown. The man in his late 50s carried the calm of decades in courtrooms. Across from him sat Dr. Harold Lewis, Robert Hayes, longtime physician, and Michael Carter, chief of security for Hayes Industries. Emily lowered her voice. They've tried once. They'll try again. I overheard them planning another attempt. If I just avoid the food, they'll only find another way. We need them cornered. Dr. Lewis tapped his glasses thoughtfully. If they want you poisoned, we give them the chance. But on your terms. A controlled reaction. Reversible. But convincing enough to fool them. Emily's eyes widened. You mean pretend to be poisoned? Daniel leaned in. Yes. Tunke. If they believe they succeeded, they'll drop their guard. They'll speak freely. And then we strike. Michael unfolded a blueprint of the Frost mansion. We'll monitor you the entire time. Micro cameras in the dining hall. And I'll have men nearby if things spiral. Emily clasped her pendant, the silver warm against her skin. Her mother's words, faith is strength, echoed within her. She hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Let's do it. But it has to be flawless. 2 nights later, the Frosts hosted another lavish dinner, this time inviting business partners to showcase their unity. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above, violins played softly in the corner, and dishes of exquisite delicacies lined the table. Eleanor raised her glass. To family, and to the prosperous year ahead. Emily smiled faintly, her hands trembling under the table. In her clutch, her phone streamed live to Daniel, Lewis, and Michael, who watched from a safe house nearby. When the wild mushroom soup was served again, Emily forced herself to lift the spoon. Richard leaned closer, eyes gleaming. I know how much you love this. Emily swallowed a single mouthful. Dr. Lewis's harmless compound, already in her system, began its work. Rapid heartbeat, flushed cheeks, trembling hands. She coughed, clutching her stomach, gasping. Gasps filled the room. Guests rose in alarm. Richard's face flashed both triumph and feigned horror. Eleanor barked at the staff. Call an ambulance now. Emily collapsed dramatically against the table, the spoon clattering. Her vision blurred, but she remembered Lewis's instructions. Don't panic. It's temporary. Trust the antidote. Within minutes, Emily was rushed to a private hospital wing arranged secretly by Dr. Lewis and Michael. The Frosts followed, their expressions masks of worry. Cameras recorded every movement. In the sterile hospital room, Emily lay hooked to monitors. Dr. Lewis, playing his role, murmured gravely, her condition is critical. We'll know more by morning. Outside, Eleanor whispered to Richard, unaware of the hidden microphone in the hallway. It worked. Once she's gone, we'll file the transfer papers immediately. Richard replied coldly. Finally, no more obstacles. The words streamed live to Daniel's laptop, recorded in crisp detail. That night, Emily's body ached from the compound, but her mind blazed with clarity. She had seen their faces, The satisfaction, the cruelty. She clutched her pendant, whispering, "Mother, guide me. This has to end." Through the glass window, she glimpsed Claire laughing on her phone, no doubt celebrating prematurely. The Frosts believed her defeated, but Emily knew the truth. She had just turned the game around. The Frosts believed the game was theirs. Emily, lying in a hospital bed, appeared fragile. Her skin pale, her breath shallow, her body wired to monitors that beeped steadily in the sterile silence. Outside, nurses whispered about her condition, and Eleanor's crocodile tears turned into polite reassurances for visiting relatives. But behind the performance, everything was orchestrated. Dr. Lewis adjusted Emily's IV with precision, keeping her symptoms dramatic yet reversible. Michael stationed security discreetly in the corridors, disguised as hospital staff. Daniel reviewed the recordings again and again. Every whispered word between Eleanor and Richard had been caught. Still, danger lingered. Emily wasn't just acting, she was bait. And predators, once hungry, rarely stopped after the first bite. It was near midnight when a nurse entered Emily's room. She was young, early 30s, with tired eyes and trembling hands. Her name tag read Ana Ramirez. She carried a tray, syringe, saline bag, gloves. Emily, half conscious, noticed the way Anna's knuckles whitened around the syringe. Fear radiated from her. Emily whispered weakly, "What are you doing?" Anna startled, glancing toward the hallway, then leaned close. Her voice cracked. "Please, forgive me. They said if I don't do this, they'll hurt my daughter. She's only 7. Emily's heart thudded. This wasn't just about her anymore. The Frosts had reached into another innocent life. She whispered back, steady despite her fear, "You don't have to go through with it. There are people protecting me. You're not alone." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. Her hands shook so violently the syringe nearly slipped. At that moment, Michael stepped in, his security badge flashing. He seized the syringe gently but firmly, nodding at Anna. "You're safe now. We'll protect your daughter too." Anna collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Cameras captured everything. Her confession, the syringe, the desperate coercion. It was another nail in the Frost family's coffin. Meanwhile, Eleanor paced the hospital corridor, her heels clicking sharply. Richard leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Claire scrolled on her phone, smirking. "Why haven't we heard news?" Eleanor hissed. "Be patient, Mother," Richard replied. "The nurse will take care of it." Claire chuckled softly. Imagine her funeral. So tragic, so convenient. Their voices, dripping with cruelty, streamed straight to Daniel's laptop. He clenched his fist but forced himself to wait. Evidence mattered more than rage. Inside the room, Dr. Lewis checked Emily's vitals and whispered, "You've done well. They're unraveling. Tomorrow we'll have everything." Emily nodded faintly. Though exhausted, her resolve only grew. She looked at Anna, who sat trembling in the corner. Emily reached out a weak hand. "Your daughter will be safe. I promise you. We'll make sure of it." Anna gripped her hand, sobbing with relief. In that moment, Emily realized something profound. The Frost's evil wasn't confined to her. It spread like poison, dragging innocents into their schemes. Stopping them wasn't just about survival. It was about justice for everyone they'd harmed. The next morning, Eleanor returned with Richard and Claire. They entered Emily's room, feigned concern etched on their faces. Eleanor sat by the bed, her perfume sharp and cloying. "Emily, dear, how are you feeling? We were so worried." Emily forced a frail smile. I don't know. I feel so weak." Richard leaned close, his voice low but caught by the hidden microphone. "It'll all be over soon, darling. Just sign a few papers. Then you can rest easy." He slipped a folder onto the bedside table. Emily glimpsed the Hayes Industries letterhead, legal transfer documents. Her heart clenched, but she kept her voice thin and wavering. "Not now. Too tired." Richard's jaw tightened. Eleanor smoothed her pearls, her tone dripping with poison disguised as sympathy. "Of course. Rest now. But don't keep us waiting too long, dear. Family doesn't last forever." They left, but their words lingered like smoke. That evening, Daniel, Michael, and Dr. Lewis met with Emily in her room, away from prying eyes. Anna joined them, still shaken but determined to testify. Daniel spread the evidence across the table. Audio files, video clips, the syringe, Anna's testimony. This is enough to indict them. But Emily, you've been extraordinary. Tomorrow, we'll set the stage for their final downfall. They'll walk right into their own trap. Emily touched her pendant, whispering to herself, "Faith is strength." Her mother's words had carried her this far, and tomorrow, they would carry her to the truth. Outside, the Frosts toasted in the hospital lounge, believing victory was near. They didn't know every word, every cruel whisper, was already sealing their fate. The morning sun slanted through the hospital blinds, pale and cold. Emily sat propped against the pillows, her body still weak but her mind sharper than ever. She had enough proof to expose the Frost's attempted murder. Yet the question burned inside her. Why? Why did Eleanor's hatred run so deep? Why wasn't money alone enough? That afternoon, Daniel returned with a stack of weathered files. The corners yellowed with age. His face was grave. "Emily, I dug into some old records. There's something you need to know. About your father. And about Richards." Emily's pulse quickened. Daniel laid out a faded newspaper clipping. The headline screamed, "Construction collapse at East River site kills 12, injures dozens." The grainy black and white photo showed twisted steel and grieving families. Daniel pointed at the article. "This was 20 years ago. The project was co-managed by your father, Robert Hayes, and Richard's father, Charles Frost. When the scaffolding collapsed, Charles shifted blame. He bribed inspectors, redirected evidence. Your father took the fall." Emily's throat tightened. "But my father never—" "No," Daniel interrupted firmly. "Your father was innocent. The Frost patriarch cut corners, pocketed profits, and people died. But history recorded Robert Hayes as the man responsible." Emily's stomach churned. The shame her father had carried, the whispered accusations, the ostracism, all lies. Daniel slid another folder forward. Inside was a list of victims. One name leapt out, Miguel Ramirez. Emily gasped. "Ramirez? That's Anna's last name." Daniel nodded gravely. Her father was among the dead. She grew up believing Robert Hayes caused it. The Frosts fueled that lie. Eleanor, too. Her own father died in that collapse. That's why she's convinced your family owes her blood. Emily pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. The pendant at her throat felt suddenly heavy, like a link to the past that had shaped this nightmare. Later that day, Daniel arranged a meeting with George Whitman, a retired foreman from the East River site. They found him in a small brick house on the outskirts of town, his back hunched, his voice gravelly but strong. George squinted at Emily, then sighed. "You're Robert Hayes' girl. I've been waiting for years to see this day." He poured black coffee into chipped mugs and began to recount. "I was there. I saw Charles Frost order cheaper steel beams, thinner scaffolding. I warned him. He told me to shut up or lose my job. When the collapse happened, it was chaos. Screams, dust, bodies under rubble. I'll never forget it." His hands shook as he lit a cigarette. When investigators came, Charles bribed them. He had connections. Your father, he was decent, quiet, didn't fight back. They pinned it all on him. I wanted to speak out, but I had a family to feed. I kept my mouth shut. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. She reached across the table, gripping George's calloused hand. You don't need to be silent anymore. Tell the truth now. For the victims, for their families, for my father. George nodded slowly, eyes misty. It's time. Too many ghosts haunt me. I'll testify. Back at the hospital, Emily shared the revelation with her father. Robert Hayes, frail and pale, sat up in bed as she explained. His eyes glistened and his voice cracked. So it was Charles Frost all along. I lived half my life under that cloud. And Eleanor, she's hated us because of a lie. Emily held his hand tightly. Father, you'll be cleared. The truth is coming out. I promise. For the first time in decades, Robert's shoulders eased, as though a great weight was beginning to lift. That evening, Emily stared out her hospital window at the city skyline. Fireworks from a winter festival popped faintly in the distance. Inside her, emotions churned, sorrow for the dead, fury at the frosts, but also fierce determination. She whispered to herself, "This isn't just about me anymore. It's about every life they destroyed, about the families who've lived with lies." She touched her pendant, the engraving pressing cool against her fingers. Faith is strength. Her mother's words had carried her through fear and betrayal. Now they would carry her into justice. Meanwhile, in the Frost mansion, Eleanor paced before the fireplace, her pearls clinking with each gesture. Richard poured himself a drink, scowling. Claire lounged on the sofa, bored. "She's still alive," Eleanor muttered. "Why is she still alive?" "Doctors can be bought," Richard said. "We'll find another way." Claire smirked. "Or maybe she knows something. The way she looked at me, it was like she'd already won." Eleanor's eyes narrowed, her voice a hiss. "She cannot win. My father died because of hers. I'll never forgive. If it takes everything we own, she will not walk away." Their obsession blinded them to the fact that every word was being documented, every plan catalogued, every motive unraveling. Emily closed her eyes that night, exhaustion pulling at her, but a spark of hope burning inside. The ghosts of East River would finally have a voice. Her father's name would be cleared. The Frost family's empire, built on lies and blood, was crumbling. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, Emily felt she wasn't just surviving. She was fighting back. The truth about the East River collapse still echoed in Emily's mind when Daniel called her the next evening. His voice was firm. "Emily, there's another layer we need to uncover. Richard isn't just after your inheritance. He's living a double life." Emily's stomach turned. She had suspected coldness in Richard's touch, the emptiness in his gaze, but the idea of outright betrayal sliced deeper. Daniel continued, "We've tracked his movements. Tonight, he has a rendezvous at the Mayfair Hotel downtown. He isn't alone." Emily insisted on coming. Disguised in a dark coat and hat, she sat in a car across the street with her cousin Rachel Hayes, a sharp-eyed woman in her 20s who had grown up admiring Emily's strength. Rachel gripped a small camera, its lens ready. At 8 p.m., Richard arrived at the Mayfair. He stepped out of a sleek black sedan, adjusting his tie, scanning the sidewalk. Then she appeared, Lena Morris, a young secretary from one of Frost Industries' partner firms. Her crimson dress shimmered under the hotel's lights. Richard wrapped an arm around her waist, kissed her cheek, and together they disappeared inside. Emily's chest tightened. She whispered, "So this is the woman he'd throw everything away for." Rachel's camera clicked rapidly, capturing every detail. Their entrance, their embrace, the way Richard's hand lingered possessively on Lena's back. Inside the hotel, microphones planted by Michael's team picked up the conversation in the suite. Richard's voice was low, intoxicated with arrogance. "Once Emily's gone, we'll have everything. Hayes Industries will be mine, and then yours too." Lena laughed softly, pouring champagne. "And Eleanor approves?" "Of course. She wants Emily out of the way more than anyone." The recording streamed live to Daniel's laptop. The betrayal was no longer suspicion. It was fact. Later that night, Emily returned to the Frost mansion for dinner. She sat across from Eleanor, Richard, and Claire, her heart heavy but her face composed. The table glistened with china and crystal, but the air was thick with venom. Eleanor eyed her like prey. "Emily, dear, you look pale. Marriage not agreeing with you?" Emily lifted her gaze slowly, meeting Eleanor's with calm steel. "Perhaps not. Or perhaps marriage means different things to different people." Richard shifted uneasily. Claire smirked, sipping her wine. Emily reached into her purse, placed a small USB on the table, and slid it toward Richard. "Would you like to explain what you were doing at the Mayfair last night?" The room froze. Eleanor's hand jerked, nearly tipping her glass. Richard's face drained of color. "You're bluffing." Daniel stepped in from the doorway, laptop under his arm. With a few keystrokes, the television on the wall flickered to life, displaying the footage. Richard and Lena entering the hotel, arms entwined, lips brushing. Then the audio. Richard's damning words about Emily's death and the inheritance. The silence shattered. Eleanor slammed her hand on the table, pearls rattling. "Turn that off. This is private." Daniel's voice cut like a knife. "This is evidence, and it will be seen by the court." Emily rose to her feet, her voice steady though her heart ached. "All these years, I believed in this family. But you, my husband, my mother-in-law, you plotted my death while pretending love. Even your daughter laughed at it." Claire sneered, tossing her hair. "Don't act like a saint. You only brought money into this family. Without your father, you're nothing." Eleanor's eyes blazed. "You've always been weak, Emily. A burden. Do you know what it's like to watch a parasite eat at your family's core?" Emily's voice sharpened. "Weak? No. Surviving poison, betrayal, and lies, that isn't weakness. That's strength." Richard lunged for the USB, but Michael appeared, blocking him. The Frost matriarch and her children were caught, their polished masks torn away to reveal the greed and cruelty beneath. That night, Emily sat alone in her room, tears streaming freely now that she was away from their venom. Betrayal stung deep. Richard had not only tried to kill her, but had already replaced her in his heart and plans. Yet as she clutched her pendant, she felt her resolve harden. "They've underestimated me," she whispered to her reflection in the mirror. "And they'll pay for it." The woman who stared back wasn't the naive wife who once believed in family dinners and warm promises. She was someone forged in fire, determined to turn her pain into power. In the Frost Mansion's West Wing, Eleanor raged. "She's cornering us. First the recordings, now this. If we don't act soon, she'll destroy us." Richard sat with his head in his hands, his arrogance crumbling. "I'll handle it." Tonight was a setback, but Emily won't make it to the end of this month. Claire smirked, flicking ash from her cigarette. "Then hurry, because she's already 10 steps ahead." What they didn't realize was that their desperation was being recorded too. Every word, every threat. The final nails in their coffin. The Frosts were cornered, their masks ripped away. Yet desperation made them dangerous. Emily knew it. Daniel knew it. And Michael, ever watchful, reminded her constantly, cornered predators strike hardest. Stay alert. But even Emily's vigilance couldn't prevent what happened next. It began with a call. Claire's voice shook as she whispered through the line. "Emily, I can't take it anymore. There's something about the East River collapse you need to know. Meet me. Please, just you." Emily hesitated. It could be a trap. But the mention of East River, of the ghosts that had haunted her father, was enough to sway her. She messaged Michael her location as precaution, then slipped into the night. The meeting place. A deserted street near the industrial district. Cold wind whipped her coat as she scanned the shadows. But instead of Claire, 2 men stepped out, their faces hidden under ski masks, a sharp cloth pressed over her mouth. The smell of chemicals overwhelmed her. Her body went limp. The last thing she saw was the flicker of a broken neon sign. When she woke, Emily was tied to a chair in a cavernous, dim warehouse. Rusted beams loomed above. The air reeked of mold and oil. Her wrists ached from rope, her throat dry. Richard stood before her, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot with fury. Eleanor sat in a chair nearby, calm and cold, as if presiding over a twisted court. Claire leaned against a pillar, arms folded, her smirk gone, replaced by restless fear. On a table in front of Emily lay a stack of papers, legal transfer documents bearing Hayes Industries' seal. Richard's voice cracked with desperation. "Sign them, Emily, right now, or you'll never see daylight again." Eleanor leaned forward, her pearls gleaming even in the shadows. "It's poetic, isn't it? You took my father, now you lose everything. Justice comes full circle." Emily's voice trembled but held defiance. "It wasn't my father." "It was yours. He cut corners. He killed those men. And you've been blind with hate ever since." Eleanor's face twisted. She slapped Emily across the cheek, the crack echoing through the warehouse. Lies! But Emily saw the flicker of doubt in Claire's eyes. Richard shoved a pen into her bound hand, pressing the papers against her lap. Sign it! Emily closed her eyes briefly. She felt the cool weight of the pendant at her throat, the keepsake her mother had given her, engraved with "Faith is strength." What Richard and Eleanor didn't know was that Michael had placed a GPS chip inside. Even as ropes cut into her wrists, she whispered in her heart, "They'll find me. I'm not alone." Across town, Michael's laptop pinged. A red dot blinked on the map. "We've got her signal." Old Frost Industries warehouse on Dockside Avenue. He barked orders into his radio. Police units mobilized, lights flashing through the night. Back in the warehouse, Richard grew more frantic. He grabbed Emily by the hair, shoving the pen harder. "Sign it or die here!" Emily met his eyes, blood trickling from her lip. "Even if I die, the truth will bury you," Eleanor hissed, her composure cracking. "End it now, Richard!" Richard raised his hand, ready to strike harder, when suddenly a deep rumble shook the floor. Sirens wailed outside. Blue and red lights splashed across the broken windows. "Police, drop your weapons!" Chaos erupted. Richard cursed, lunging for the papers. Eleanor shrieked. Claire froze in place. Michael and a squad of officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Richard tried to run, but Michael tackled him to the ground. Eleanor screamed, clawing at officers as they restrained her. Claire slid down the pillar, covering her face, sobbing. Emily, still tied, shouted, "In the floor! The basement! Check the basement!" Officers forced open a rusted trapdoor in the corner. The smell of decay hit instantly. Flashlights revealed skeletal remains, broken helmets, rusted name tags, evidence of the East River collapse victims, hidden for 2 decades. An officer lifted a corroded tag that read, "Miguel Ramirez, Anna's father." The warehouse went silent except for Eleanor's broken sobs. "You see?" Emily whispered hoarsely. "The truth always finds its way out." Officers untied her, draping a blanket over her shoulders. She stumbled to her feet, her cheeks swollen, her body aching, but her spirit unbroken. Michael steadied her, murmuring, "You did it. That pendant saved your life." Emily clutched it tightly, tears streaming. "Not just mine. My mother's faith saved us all." As Eleanor and Richard were dragged away in cuffs, Emily stood in the warehouse doorway, breathing in the cold night air. The moonlight poured over the rust and rubble, illuminating the graves of the past. For the first time, the weight on her chest began to lift. The courtroom was packed. Reporters jostled for space, cameras clicked, and the families of the East River victims filled the benches, their faces etched with decades of grief. At the center sat Eleanor Frost, Richard Frost, and Claire. No longer polished socialites, but defendants in shackles. Emily sat near the front, her posture straight, her face calm yet resolute. Beside her, Robert Hayes leaned on his cane, fragile but lighter than he had looked in years. Daniel, Michael, and Dr. Lewis were all present, silent pillars of support. Around Emily's neck, the silver pendant glimmered beneath the courtroom lights. The prosecution presented their case with devastating clarity. Audio recordings of Eleanor plotting Emily's murder. Video of Richard with Lena Morris, admitting he wanted Emily dead for the inheritance. Testimony from Anna Ramirez, the nurse coerced into killing Emily. George Whitman's eyewitness account of Charles Frost's shortcuts that caused the East River collapse. And most damning, the skeletal remains found beneath the Frost warehouse, irrefutable proof of a cover-up spanning 20 years. When Eleanor was asked to testify, her rage exploded. "Robert Hayes destroyed my family. He took my father." Emily rose, her voice steady but full of fire. "No, Eleanor. It was Charles Frost who killed your father. My father bore a lie to protect his family, while yours built an empire on blood." The words rippled through the courtroom. For the first time, Eleanor faltered, her fury giving way to silence. Days of trial ended with the judge's gavel striking hard. Charles Frost, posthumously, officially declared responsible for the East River collapse. Robert Hayes, fully exonerated. Eleanor Frost, 20 years for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and obstruction. Richard Frost, life imprisonment without parole for attempted murder, fraud, and racketeering. Claire Frost, 15 years for complicity, reduced only because of her eventual cooperation. The verdict brought a wave of relief. Families of the construction victims wept openly, some hugging Emily, thanking her for exposing the truth. Reporters dubbed her the heiress who fought back. Robert Hayes squeezed his daughter's hand. His eyes glistened. I told myself I'd die a disgraced man. But you gave me back my name. And more, you gave the dead their justice. Emily's throat tightened. She leaned close, whispering, "We did it together, Father. And it's not over yet." Weeks later, Hayes Industries convened under new leadership. Emily stood at the podium in the company atrium. Reporters and employees gathered around. Behind her hung a banner, Hayes Foundation for Women and Families. Her voice was clear, her words heartfelt. I survived because I refused to be silent. But there are countless women who suffer in silence, at the hands of abusive partners, controlling families, or unjust systems. Today, we dedicate a portion of Hayes Industries' profits to the foundation. This will fund shelters, legal aid, and counseling for women and children in crisis. No one should feel as alone as I once did. Applause thundered through the hall. Some employees cried. Others raised fists in solidarity. Emily stepped back, her heart swelling. Her pain had not been in vain. She had turned her scars into shelter for others. That year's New Year's Eve, Emily sat with her father in their restored family home. The dining table wasn't lavish, just roasted chicken, potatoes, and apple pie. But it was warm, genuine, filled with laughter from Rachel, Michael, and Dr. Lewis, all now part of her chosen family. When midnight neared, Emily carried a small plate to the fireplace. On it sat a single bowl of wild mushroom soup. She placed it gently on the mantel beneath her mother's framed photo. "This time," she whispered, "it isn't poison, it's hope." Her father chuckled softly, his hand steady on her shoulder. Fireworks burst outside, painting the night sky in gold and crimson. Emily touched her pendant once more, feeling its familiar weight. Faith is strength. The past had been dark. But tonight, as the clock struck midnight, she felt only renewal. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a leader, a protector, a beacon. And in that moment, amid the warmth of family, the roar of fireworks, and the soft memory of her mother, Emily Hayes finally stepped into the new year not with fear, but with hope. In the end, Emily's story is not only about betrayal, poison, or courtroom battles. It's about the enduring strength of truth and the resilience of the human spirit. She began as a woman trapped in a gilded cage, surrounded by deception and danger. Yet she chose not to surrender. By gathering courage, evidence, and allies, Emily transformed from a victim into a voice for justice. Her journey reminds us that lies, no matter how carefully buried, will one day surface, and that even when hatred tries to destroy, faith and perseverance can rebuild. The deeper lesson here is about empowerment. Too often, women who face abuse or manipulation are silenced by fear or tradition. Emily shows us that silence is not the answer. Standing up, speaking out, and building support can turn despair into action. Her decision to create a foundation for women and families in crisis is more than a narrative ending. It's a call for us to consider, how can we, in our own lives, help those who suffer quietly? How can we ensure that justice isn't just a word, but a lived reality for our communities? If Emily's journey has touched you, I invite you to share this story. Subscribe for more and join the conversation. Your voice matters, and together we can amplify stories that inspire change and give strength to those who need it most. May this reminder of resilience and renewal bring you peace tonight. And as you step into a new year of your own, may hope, truth, and kindness always light your way.